Well, hello and welcome to the Eagle's Nest. This is episode number 11. And the Eagle's Nest is the audio retelling of the book by Charles Supersinski, past president of the Copper Peak Ski Club. And it's titled Soaring with the Eagles, the Copper Peak Story. And it talks about the history of the sport of ski jumping all the way back to the turn of the century, and I mean, the 20th century. And now we're finding ourselves in 1940. As you recall from the last episode, the Gogebic Range Ski Club had been sending skiers to 15 different communities, and it's a feat never duplicated before or after in the history of the club. As you'll notice, the names are becoming more familiar. The junior skiers were sent by the club to the Michigan and Wisconsin meet at Eau Claire on January 21st, 1940. Gene Deline placed 5th in Class A, Donald Hine was 4th in Class B, and Jack Berquist was 2nd in Class C. Wisconsin skiers edged Michigan skiers in total points. The Gogebic Range Ski Club sent skiers to two meets, Plymouth and New London, Wisconsin, in 1940. Ironwood skiers did well, again, winning 6 awards at New London. Aino Weimery was 1st in Class A. In Class B, Ray Zabersky was 1st, John Zabersky was 2nd, and Roy Hippica was 4th. In the senior class, Leo Anderson was 1st and Walter Brotland was 2nd. Earl Minkin placed 2nd in Class A at Plymouth. At the U.S. Central Association's championship meet in St. Paul on February 4th, 1940, Earl Minkin tied for 3rd in Class A. Tony Osterman was 10th in Class B, and Robert Hine placed 4th in Class C. So, here we are again, 1940, but we're at Curry Hill again. For the third time in about 30 years, Curry Hill became a venue for ski jumping. On February 10th, 1940, had a boys' tournament that was sponsored by the WPA, the Work Projects Administration. Apparently, youngsters had constructed a small scaffold on the historic site of Curry Hill, but it allowed them to make jumps of about 85 feet. Winners were Ray Holm in Class A, Mark Deline in Class B, and Arvid Michelson in Class C. A number of professionals had expressed an interest in returning to amateur status. Ted Zabersky had done so earlier, and his younger brother Stanley hoped to compete in Ironwood as an amateur at the 1940 Wolverine Invitational. In an article prior to the meet, one of Stanley's performances as a pro out east tells of the daredevil nature of this talented athlete. Stanley Zabersky, former Ironwood ski jumper who rode for several years as a professional and was recently reinstated as an amateur, will compete in Class A at Ironwood. Stosh captured the Eastern professional title just before forsaking the pro ranks, and one of his rides is legend for the ski fans in that section of the country. A night exhibition meet had been planned, but the floodlighting system went awry, and the promoter was at a loss of how to keep the fans. Zabersky said that he would ride the Chicopee, Massachusetts slide if he were given 2 flashlights. The flashlights were provided. A standing jump of better than 180 feet was made, and the promoter was saved, and the fans were amazed at the display of courage and ability. Well, those Ironwood daredevil skiers had often participated in special exhibitions in an attempt to please the fans following a ski meet. This included performing twin jumps, the diamond, somersaults, and the shooting star. At the second annual tournament in Iron Mountain, Michigan on Sunday, February 11th, 1940, Ted Zabersky displayed his command of the big hill by taking first place in Class A. He also leaped 273 feet in exhibition after the meet and established an unofficial U.S. distance mark and the longest leap off the artificial slide. In Class B, Ray Zabersky placed 3rd and Walter Brotland placed 3rd in the senior class. The first Nordic combined event to be held in this area, in which skiers participated in both jumping and cross-country skiing, was sponsored by the Gateway Ski Club of Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin, on the weekend of February 17th and 18th, 1940. Ted Zabriskie continued his domination of the Suicide Hill competition in Ishpeming in 1940, winning first place, beating Walter Biela Ishpeming, his co-member of the 1940 Olympic team. Zabriskie retained his hill record of 219 feet set in 1937. Walter Coos placed fourth in Class C. The friendly competition between Ted Zabriskie and the Bielas in the several years preceding World War II is legendary. No matter where they jumped, top billing was always received. So we're still continuing in 1940. The ski season is over, but oh no, not again. For the third time, Mother Nature was not very kind to the ski jumping community of Ironwood and the Gogebic Range, as reported in the Daily Globe on June 3, 1940. A high wind that struck with almost tornado intensity in Ironwood Township yesterday afternoon destroyed the ski scaffold of the Gogebic Range Ski Club on Wolverine Hill, northeast of Ironwood. The ski scaffold, a high timber and frame structure that was erected only last year, replacing a smaller scaffold, was leveled, and parts of it were scattered for many yards around. The judging stand at the slide was also destroyed. The club had no insurance on the scaffold. Earl Minkin, president of the ski club, reported after surveying the damage that the main timbers of the scaffold, with one exception, were not broken when they fell. He expressed the opinion that it would be possible for the clubs to salvage most of the material and rebuild the slide before winter. The Gogebic Range Ski Club was undaunted by this event and, like a bunch of beavers, set to the task of rebuilding the 60-foot-high structure. The height was about the same as the old scaffold. Distances jumped would be comparable to those achieved in the past 2 years. The rebuilding task was completed in time for the 41 ski season. Much of the work was done by volunteers, as is the case with every ski jumping club in the country. We're still in 1941, but the clouds of war were affecting the skiing community. As the ski season approached, the United States was not in the war per se, but a program of military preparedness was running throughout the country. In the area, iron ore mining was on the increase, and young men were volunteering for the military. The Daily Globe wrote this story about one of Ironwood's top ski jumpers on January 17, 1941. Ray Zabriskie, 19, well-known Ironwood ski jumper, who performed several seasons for the Gogebic Range Ski Club, is termed the best skier of the 15th Infantry Ski Patrol. Mount Rainier is the location, and in an article that appeared in this week's issue of Life magazine. The comment about the local skier accompanies a magazine picture in which Zabriskie is shown making a small jump. Zabriskie is dressed in the full Army equipment which has been furnished to men of the patrol. When he volunteered 5 months ago, Zabriskie asked to be placed in the ski unit, and his request was granted. It was also learned that he earned a rating as one of the best rifle shots in the unit shortly after reporting for duty. This was the start of what was to turn into a deluge of men volunteering or being drafted into the military service. Every community and every ski club was affected. They, however, were determined to keep life as ordinary as possible, including ski jumping activity throughout the country. The 1941 ski season started in Oconomowoc on January 5th, with Ted Zabriskie winning first in Class A, edging out his friend and competitor from Ishpeming, Walter Biela. In Class B, Roy Hippica placed fourth. In Class C, Jack Zambrovitz was third and Robert Hine was fourth. In the senior class, Lawrence Marine, Milwaukee, and Ironwood placed second. This was a good start for the Ironwood skiers. The Gogebic Range Ski Club sent 8 skiers to Cary, Illinois to compete in the Norge Ski Hill on Sunday, January 19th of 41. None of the Ironwood skiers placed in the competition as their performances were overshadowed by Torger Tokol, the incredibly talented import from Norway. He repeated his defense of the title earned a year ago in Norge. 1 week later, in New London, Wisconsin, Torger Tokol won the Class A event, winning the Central Championship. But more stunning was the fact that this victory was Tokol's 22nd win in 24 events in the short time that he'd been here in this country since late winter of 1939. Torger Tokol would go on to establish a record in this country unequaled by any skier past, present, and perhaps the future. He would become to ski jumping what Michael Jordan was to basketball. Over in Duluth on February 2nd, 1941, Ted Zabriskie placed 4th. The big news, however, was the fact that Torger Tokol set a new hill record of 203 feet but fell on his first ride, a rare phenomenon indeed. On the local scene, the Northwood Sports Club of Hurley, Wisconsin, sponsored a meet at Eagles Bluff on February 2nd, 1941. Some 40 riders from Hurley and Ironwood participated in 4 classes. Senior class for skiers 18 and older, Class A 16 and 17-year-olds, Class B 13 through 15, and Class C for youngsters 12 and under. Ken Anderson, Ironwood, won the senior class. Bill Zell, or William Zell, of Hurley, won Class C. Mark Deline, Ironwood, won Class B, and Donald Packmeyer of Ironwood won Class C. To the disappointment of many fans and skiers, bad weather caused the postponement of the tournament scheduled at Wolverine Hill for February 16, 1941. The event was rescheduled for March 9th with the hopes that many quality skiers would be able to compete here who before that had conflicts. Over in Alston, Michigan on the same weekend, Eno Wiemery won first in Class A. Walter Coos was first in Class C, and Axel Wick won the senior class. Ted Zabriskie was one of the top skiers invited to participate in the national tournament held in Hyack, Washington on March 2nd, 1941. Torger Tokol dominated this event. The big-time ski jumpers are saying, last year you could come close to Tokol. This year you can't even come close. Ted Zabriskie's Ironwood's Own said before the national event, Tokol springs up 10 feet higher in the air at the takeoff than the rest of the riders. He'll win. Sunday afternoon, Tokol jumped 288 feet for a new American mark, and Elf Engen, winner at Iron Mountain, was 26 feet back of Tokol with 262 feet, his longest jump. Tokol won, and no one came close. Zabriskie had an unofficial mark of 273 feet at Iron Mountain. Skiers start young in Ironwood. One of the highlights of the 1941 Wolverine meet was spelled out. 3 local ski jumpers, none of them over 12 years of age, will give an exhibition prior to the tournament tomorrow, if weather and hill conditions permit. These boys are Chester Zabriskie, Don Carley, and Mark Deline. Now we're in 1942, the last season of competition before World War II. With the United States being thrown into World War II with the bombing of Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, every community was dramatically affected in numerous ways. So too was the ski jumping community, as young men were being drafted into the armed services and others were moving to work opportunities in the war industries. The ranks of the Gogebic Range Ski Club were thinning, and the club made every effort to continue. The ski season was also hampered by the lack of snowfall throughout the Midwest in 1942. It became difficult to find the necessary manpower in order to sponsor the club's annual tournament. The Midwest's biggest ski tournament, scheduled for Giant Pine Mountain at Iron Mountain on February 1st, 1942, had to be rescheduled to March 1st because of a lack of snow. The Gogebic Range was plagued with the same problems. For the first time in the history of ski jumping on the Gogebic Range, and that goes back a long ways, the local ski club will have to haul snow to Wolverine Hill in order to set it into shape for the annual tournament on Sunday, February 15th. A bit of good news, Boyd Spirits receiving word that Torger Tokel and Art Devlin, two of the nation's top jumpers, would compete in Ironwood and Iron Mountain. Other top-notch entries to the Ironwood meet include Eugene Wilson of Coleraine, George Kutlaric of Duluth, Roy Beadla of Ishpeming, and Ironwood's own Nick Hakela and brothers Ted and Stan Zaberski. This was, without a doubt, the strongest field of competitors to Ironwood in the history of the Gogebic Range Ski Club. The results of the meet, highlighted in the Daily Globe headline on Monday, February 16th, tells it all. The headline said, Torger Tokel sets new hill record of 216 feet. The ski event is a huge success. Great competitive field puts on a fine show in a 2-hour meet. The top 4 competitors of Tokel, Wilson, Devlin, and Kutlaric all had leaps greater than 200 feet. Ted Zaberski had leaps of 195 and 196 feet, but fell on his second ride to take him out of the medals. Post-meet editorial clips in the same issue of the Daily Globe add flavor to this most successful event. Torger Tokel and Art Devlin were everything that had been said about them. Besides being great ski riders who produce for the fans, they are fine gentlemen and made a great hit with the skiers and fans here. Sam Davey is one of our favorites. We wish he'd practice a little more, and we'll bet he'd be one of the best. He rides about 6 times a year and then parks down near the 190-foot mark with ease. Sam used to lack the weight to get him out and down, but now he packs plenty. From a competitive perspective, the meet was one of the most successful sponsored by the Gogebic Range Ski Club. The Ironwood Globe, though, in February 20th, 1942, tells a different story. The Gogebic Range Ski Club was struggling in 1942. This year came, but the money-making crowd that should have responded was not on hand. The club is now faced with deciding whether the Gogebic Range sports fans want and will pay for future tournaments. Well, the Gogebic Range Ski Club held a meeting open to the public on Tuesday, March 13, 1942, in an effort to rebuild support for ski jumping on the Gogebic Range. Please bear in mind, though, there was a war going on in 1942. Many expressed strong opposition to the discontinuation of the club, especially during the war period. Additional recommendations included altering the name to the Ironwood Ski Club to give area better identification, set dues and assess members to help with the financial shortfall, contact businesses and others for sponsorships and donations for events, create a committee to investigate a site which would have 300-foot leaps, and investigate locations for smaller practice hills for younger skiers. Send letters to ski jumpers in the military informing them of future plans. Now let's talk about Torger Tokel, the ski jumper of the century. It is virtually impossible to compare the performance of an athlete of one generation to that of an earlier or later time. Ski jumping, like so many other sports, involves making comparisons not particularly valid. There is, however, one ski jumper in the 20th century who stood head and shoulders above any other competitor in the country in the relatively short period of time from 1939 to 1942 in which he participated. Torger Tokel simply dominated the sport. He, like so many other immigrants to this country, came from Norway to the USA to escape the Nazi threat looming over Europe. His ski jumping exploits are legendary. Shortly after arriving in New York on January 21st, 1939, Torger Tokl, representing the Norway Club from New York City, participated in the meet in which jumpers for the 1940 U.S. Olympics team were to be selected. Being new to this country, he more than likely was not eligible for the U.S. team, but he participated in Class B and outjumped the best performances from the U.S. jumpers. The tryouts were held in Berlin, New Hampshire on February 26, 1939. A crowd of 25,000 watched this event. That season was the start of a run of victories which would span a little more than 3 years. America's entry into the war would thereafter put ski jumping on hold for several years. Torkel's winning streak would continue through the 1942 season. Ironwood was fortunate to attract him to Wolverine Hill, where he set a hill record of 216 feet, which would last nearly 20 years until the slide blew down in 1963. Later on, March 1st, Tokl would set a new U.S. record at Iron Mountain of 289 feet. The name of Tokl was lionized throughout the nation by his spectacular jumping feats, which have never been and possibly never will be equaled. The following day, after he arrived in the United States, he was being cheered by 12,000 skiing followers for a record-breaking performance in Bear Mountain, New York. The popular Norseman has made spectacular ski jumping appear like child's play. In 3 years, he has competed in 38 meets. All told, he won first place in 35 of them and has broken 19 hill records. What makes Tokl's amazing achievements more phenomenal is that he smashes standards by large margins under all conditions. As perilous as the sport is, he has never suffered a serious injury, which is extraordinary in itself. He has fallen only 5 times in more than 450 jumps. This season is likely his last competitive riding for a long period, as he's slated for the Army soon. Rumors abounded for many years in the ski halls of Upper Michigan about the leaping ability of Torger Tokl. It is said that he was able to leap from a squat position, which is the same as the in-run position, to a height of 48 inches. Some say as high as 6 feet, to the top of a table and keep his legs extended. While serving in the military, it is said he could, with full 60-pound backpack, jump onto the box of a 5-ton truck. All the evidence about Tokl points to the fact that he was a quiet, unassuming, unpretentious individual. While he was winning many honors, he never deviated from his basic personality. Torger Tokl was to ski jumping what Babe Ruth was to baseball or Michael Jordan was to basketball. This is evident in a brief article about Tokl's appearances in Iron Mountain. In an article titled Toklish Subject, when ski jumper Torger Tokl went to Niagara, Wisconsin to practice for last Sunday's record-breaking jump in Iron Mountain, so many of the kids played hooky to see him that they closed the schools rather than hold classes with only half the pupils present. Tokl, incidentally, has aided the American Friends of Norway quite a bit by autographing the skis used in his fancy jumps and donating them to be auctioned. Tokl expressed his thoughts about the sport of ski jumping in an article written by Burton Benjamin of Norriton, Connecticut, which appeared in the Daily Globe on February 6, 1942. He thinks, that being Tokl, that 427 feet is the maximum distance possible. Wind resistance, combined with the speed that would have to be acquired, would make controlled jumping impossible at more than that. No one could have predicted that a new world ski jumping record of 246.5 meters, 809 feet, would be set by John Evensen of Norway on February 11, 2011, in Vikersund, Norway. Torger Tokl went on to serve his country as part of the 10th Mountain Division. In the spring of 1945, he was killed in action in the Apennines Mountains in northern Italy. Torgal Tocco was a great American and a great ski jumper. Well, that about does it for this episode of The Eagle's Nest. This is your narrator, Dan McManman, saying thank you so much for joining us with the retelling of this great book titled Soaring with the Eagles, The Copper Peak Story by Charlie Supersinski. Please join us again next time, and keep in mind, when planning your vacations to the Western UP, why not plan a trip over to Copper Peak? And, it's fun for the whole family. Don't forget that Charlie's book is available at the Depot in downtown Ironwood, where the Chamber of Commerce is, and the Historical Society Museum is located there too. And the book is also available at the Downtown Art Place in Ironwood. These episodes of The Eagle's Nest are broadcast on Copper Peak Radio 102.1 FM at 6:08 a.m. and p.m. and 11:08 a.m. and p.m. Central Time. We're on YouTube all the time, including previous episodes. Just go to YouTube and use the search terms Copper Peak Eagle's Nest. Scroll to the eagle sitting in the nest on top of the Copper Peak slide. That's our YouTube channel, and the episodes are numbered. So if you get done with one episode, it should go right to the next one. So that's about it for this time. Thanks again for listening, and see you at the Eagle's Nest the next time we get together. Bye now.